Hello everyone. Let's do a quick review of what we learned in the last video. We learned about the solution. We learned about a project and how projects are inside of a solution file. We learned about classes, how they are the building blocks of all your programs and they're the nouns in your applications. We learned about methods, how they're the verbs in your applications. We learned about properties. Properties describe things inside of your classes. We learned about namespaces, which are holding folders, basically, for your classes. We learned about using statements, which declare that we will be using a certain namespace. It will save us time when writing our code. So guys, before we go any farther, the first thing we need to learn this time around is types. Types are nothing but built-in classes that we will use all over our programs time and time again. There are quite a few built-in types that Microsoft has provided for us, such as booleans, bools. They provide trues and falses. We have integers. This is one you'll use a lot. It describes numbers. Doubles describes numbers in a different way. Floats describe numbers in a different way. We have string. You saw string quite a bit last time. That describes strings, basically strings of characters such as words, sentences, books, paragraphs. Oh, and as you'll notice, all these types are prepended by system, which means they all are inside the system namespace. So if you want to use an int, all you've got to do is add the using system namespace. All right, so let's look a little bit closer at console, what console can do. Here's what we can do when we're using a class that we've referenced that we didn't necessarily write. We can right click on it and say go to definition. We can't say go to implementation because we did not create the class. We don't have that code. We do have data, metadata that will tell us about it if we say go to definition. So I'm going to click go to definition. And now I can see all the information about console. I won't see all the code necessarily, but I'll see all the things it can do. You can see it's in the namespace system, as we've talked about before. Here are all of its properties. You can tell their properties by the gets and the sets. That's one way of telling that they are the properties. You can get this system. You can actually set buffer width right here. You could set buffer height. You can get is input redirected. These are properties that describe the console. And now here we've got all of our methods. Beep. Ooh, let's try beep. Read line. We're going to use this in just a second. Reset color. These are the things that make the console do things. As you can see right here, here's our write method that we use when we say hello world. Now look, why do we have all these different write methods? Isn't that weird? It's the same method name over and over again. This is called method overloading. You can have the same name method as long as your things that you send into the method are different. So let's talk about the things we send into a method. When we write a method, one of the things that we have to do with the method is provide it a list of arguments. Arguments being stuff you're going to send in that I can do stuff with. So I want to do a method that adds two numbers together. And I'm going to say, hey, if you give me two numbers into our method, this name is terrible. Add numbers. And so I'm going to create a list of arguments in this parentheses for what I want you to send me to use add numbers. So what do I need for adding numbers? Well, I need at least two numbers. So I'm going to make two arguments. Here's our int, remember, our integer. And as I hover over, you can see it's in system namespace. And it tells you that it represents a 32-bit signed integer. I'm going to call this first number. And I'm going to comma because I want a second argument. And I'm going to say send me a second number. And now I'm going to use these curly braces. This is the structure of a method. You've got your access modifier, which I'll talk about in a minute. You've got what it returns, if anything. You'll notice that the main doesn't return anything, and that's void. When you're not returning anything, it's void. You're returning void. You're returning nothing. When you're returning something, you tell it what type that you're returning. We're returning a string, system class string. So I've got red squigglies because I'm actually not doing what I say I'm going to do. I'm telling Visual Studio that this method will return a string, but you can see I'm doing nothing inside, so I better do what I'm saying I'm going to do. So I can literally say return That's the return statement. And I need to return a string. If I said Todd, I've now fulfilled this contract. People could use this, but it really doesn't, it's not helpful, is it? So now if I want to use this in my main method, well, first of all, I got a problem because main method is a static method and it can't reference a method that doesn't have static. So I said this is the basic way you put a method together. You can also have the modifier of static in here, which tells me this is a static method. I won't go into that right now. Just know that I need this so I can use this up here. Now you can see it's already telling me right there, there's AddNumbers. And looky over here. It knows, it's given me a hint as to the argument list. If this was in a different folder, a different file, whatever, I would need this to give me some help. So I'm gonna say AddNumbers. Oops. There's my first number. Oh, and it wants a number, so I'm gonna give it Todd. Is Todd a number? No, it's gonna break. And I'm gonna give it a second number of 3. You can see I've got a red squiggly because it wants a number and I gave it Todd. So I'm gonna give it 2 plus 3. AddNumbers, 2 plus 3, that's it. Great. So what's gonna happen here? It's gonna call AddNumbers, it's gonna send in 2 plus 3, and it's gonna return Todd. This is all insanity. None of this makes sense. First of all, I'm returning a string when I say I'm adding numbers. The method name is not named correctly. What I'm returning is a string. Shouldn't I return a number? And shouldn't I return something besides the word Todd? You can see over here, as I'm writing this, Visual Studio has given me some dots. These are the dots of stupidity saying, guys, you're doing nothing with these things over here. As I hover over it, the comment is, remove unused parameter, please. You just declared a parameter, an argument, and you didn't do anything with it. When you're developing, look around. Visual Studio tries to give you all kinds of help. Additionally, when I call this and I return something, it just gets returned. Why would I do that? What good is that? That's nothing. That does no good to just return something up here and do nothing with it. I need a way, if there was only a way I could capture what comes back to me from a method. Well, we do have that. That's called a variable. A variable is a container that will hold information. So I really want to get a container of what this is. So I'm going to declare var, meaning variable, and I need to give my container a name. Var, I'm going to intentionally be dumb here. The add number container. I would never name it this. And I'm going to say equals that. See, this is returning something, and I'm calling it this. And looky there, it's telling me it's going to be a string. Why? Because this returns a string. If I made this an integer, this would change to an integer. So we've just declared our first variable, guys. Congratulations. Now, this is kind of the new convention for declaring variables by using var. The old way and the more clear way, and the way you should do it if it's not clear, is instead of using var, this is supposed to be the type of variable. So the more clear way is to say, I'm going to declare a string variable named the number container, and it's AddNumbers. Now, when I run my program, this will add numbers and it will be stuck in here. Let's watch this. We can literally watch this happen. If you come over to the numbers and you click on the left of the line number, you get a little red dot. That's called a debugging line. We can actually stop in the middle of a program execution and step through and see what happens. Watch this. This is cool. So I'm going to hit F5 or up here. It'll begin to build and it will hit my debugging line and it will pause. Boom. You can see it built the console application. It ran the first line, hello world, and now it's stuck at the second line. So here we are. Up here are arrows on how to step into my code and move through my code. I want to hit an F11. Step into. I'm at this line. What's the next thing that's going to happen here is it's going to call this method. So when I hit F11, boom, it just came down here to call this method. Now watch. I can hover over these arguments and looky there. First number is 2. You see that? Second number is 3. So I know that I have 2 and 3. Oh, I wrote numer. You guys have been looking at that for a couple minutes going, what the? So I'm going to keep stepping through. I'm going to hit F11 again, and I'm going to return Todd. Now I'm at the last line, so I'll jump back up to this line, and I'm going to go one more step. So now I'm past this line. So if I hover over the add number container, look, it tells me exactly what it equals. Todd. I literally know what's in here. That's very cool. And then I'm going to F11, and the program's over. And I just grabbed a container. I just created a container. I created a variable named the add number container and did nothing with it. What should we do with it? Let's at least do something with it. So what we could do again is we could say Console.ReadLine the add number container. Now I'm going to run through this again. I'm going to hit F5. I'm gonna now, instead of F11, because I don't need to go through this again, I know what happens, I can do F10, which is step over, which means don't step down into this, step over. I'm gonna right line, and now I'm gonna look at my console, and looky there. Boom. We just wrote our variable to our console. I need to continue and finish. So we got a couple problems here. First of all, this is still stupid. AddNumbers doesn't do what it said it's going to do, correct? So let's fix that first of all. We need to say, we're going to return an actual int because this just doesn't make sense. And we're going to actually do something. So we can do mathematical, just like a calculator, do mathematical operations on numbers. We know it's a number. So we're going to say first number minus second numer. Let's change that. Here's a quick shortcut for you. If you want to, okay, I'm going to do this, second numer. So now I've named it what it's supposed to be named, right? But it still looks dumb. So if I come back around a few hours later and go, what the? And I've written this half a dozen times in my method, rather than change this here and then go change it several other times, if I click on it and I say Control RR, that is rename, and it's handy because it renames all the instances. You'll see that right here, it tells me I'm going to rename 2 references in this file. So that just saves me having to do it 52 times if I screwed up. You can see it changes it. I'm going to hit apply, and now we've got second number. And now I'm subtracting first number from second number. Just kidding. Whoop. All right. So, can we run this program? Let's run this program. What's going to happen? What is this? There were build errors. Would you like to continue and run the last successful build? Well, no, I want to know what's happening. So, something broke. We caused a bug. Congratulations, guys. We just got your very first bug. See down here, it says build failed. Get used to this. Get used to this. You're going to make only 10 more million bugs in your life if you decide to be a programmer for only a year. 10 million bugs per year. It's just part of it. So I'm going to hit no because I'm going to see what the heck's going on. So it stops. Right here in our output section, it'll tell you what the problem is. Or I could hover over my red squiggly. And it says, I cannot implicitly convert type int to type string. Implicit as opposed to explicit. Implicit means I can't just do something, I can't just do something with an implication. You got to tell me for sure you want to do something, because I'm not going to assume that you want to do something. You see, C# is what's called strongly typed. It doesn't give you a noose for which you can hang yourself with. I don't want to go too far into this, but if you use JavaScript would just say, okay, I know you gave me numbers and you want a string, I'll just turn this into a string. JavaScript would do that for you, which sounds great, and it is pretty nice, but it allows you to screw up big time. C# won't do that. C# says, you got to tell me exactly what you want to do. So you can see it's a problem because I'm trying to assign this integer that's coming back from here to a string. So had I not declared it a string and just var, that wouldn't have happened. It would have been like, okay, you didn't tell me for sure it was a string. I'll make sure that it's an integer. Or I could just say integer. Now let's run through it and let's add. Throw some numbers on there. That might be too big for an int. Exactly. Cannot convert from long to int. I had to put too many numbers in there. That's not, integer is only 32 bits. This is too long, so let's do that. Nope. We're gonna run it again. Let's step in to see the addition. Actually, we're not gonna see much. Boom, return, return, return. And let's check our number. Oh yeah, that's what I thought it would be. 2,266,576. Let's step in. Let's check our console line. There it is. Beauty, eh? Oh, I keep trying to stop that. Guys, fantastic. You've learned about variables. You've learned about types. You've learned about how to create your own methods. Now let's get back to console. Remember how I said we have overloaded methods? So I could make methods, different methods that do different things as long as my argument list is not the same. It will understand that, oh, you want this or you want that. So I can make a new, so over here, I can make a new method called AddNumbers that takes a different number of numbers or different types and do different things, but I don't want to get into that just yet. I'm getting ahead of myself. I want to go back to console and I want to find something that we're going to use a lot. It's called readLine. What does this tell us right here by looking at readLine? readLine's a method. It doesn't, you don't have to send anything in to use readLine. It doesn't need anything, and it's going to return to you a string. Basically what it's going to do, again, I told you we couldn't read the code, but we can read comments. Okay, so if you hit this plus button, you can read the comments of what it's going to do. readLine tells us it's going to read the next line of characters from the standard input stream. All right, that's what we want. I want to grab input from the user. This game is no fun if the user just sits and reads things that we write out ourselves, correct? So let's get something from the user. Now you saw comments over here are done with two slashes. Let's just comment this out for now. I'm going to say // See how it turns green? // That's telling the compiler not to read those lines. So let's get something from the user. What do we want from the user? Let's just get anything. I'm going to create a variable to hold the user's response, because remember how we did it this way? We know it's coming back with a string. I could say string, or I could say var. The user's, all right, we don't need to be that verbose. Let's just say user input for now equals console, and I hit the tab button to complete that dot read line. Wow, it's almost like it knew what I was going to do. Ooh, I want a beep. Play the sound of a beep through the console speakers. We got a beep first. Now, beep's not going to return a string, so that's an error. I'm totally digressing, but I want to hear a beep. So we're going to beep first, and then we're going to get stuff. Console.readLine. And again, there's no arguments. So whatever the user inputs on that line, it's going to get put into user input. So how will this be helpful by getting this? Let's say console, write line. Let's write what the person wrote. User input. All right, so we're going to write hello world. We're going to beep, I think. I've never beeped on the console before. We're going to then get user input, and then we're going to write what the person did. So let's stop this right here and run the program. Oh, did you hear that? It was the beep. Now we're stuck here on user input. So this actually, we need to go past this. So I'm going to hit F10, which goes in, which means now I'm at the line, I'm at read line. Console's now waiting for us to write something. RP, get on with the game already. Boom, it goes to the next line. Let's see what the user input was. Get on with the game already, and it's going to, and I'm gonna hit F10 so it doesn't go to the end. I'm gonna check that, and it rewrote it down there. All right, guys, so I feel like we're at a place where we can actually start doing stuff now. So I promise that we get into our game right now, so let's do that. Let's wipe out all of that, and let's get rid of this ridiculous method. And let's start doing stuff. So what's the first thing we want to do? How about we make a title? That might be the first thing we'd want to do. That would definitely be the first thing that a user sees. So let's just do that. Let's create a method called make title. It's the very first thing we do when we start the game. We're making the title. Now, nothing's happening, doesn't know what's going on. You could literally use this if you'd like to make it generate a method for you, or you can just go down here and create your own. Let's say generate a method. What's this private? Let's talk about access modifiers real quick, guys. Again, I'll share all these links in the description below, just like I did last video. So access modifiers, all types and type members, properties, have an accessibility level. The accessibility level controls whether they can be used from other code in your assembly or other assemblies. So what does that mean? So I have a program. If I made other classes and something that might use program in its class, it could actually call out and try to use program. I want to be able to control things that it can use and can and can't use. I don't want some other class to be able to call make title because it might throw a title up in my console game where it doesn't belong. So I want to make it private. That's why I say only things inside this class can use this method. You'll notice both the program and the main don't have private, public, or whatever on it. And public is the modifier that you would use to say anyone can use this, anyone can call this. If there is no modifier, the default is private. So back to this, make title. It's a private method. It can call it because it's in the same class. You can call anything in the same class that you want. So guys, when you ask Visual Studio to make a method for you, it's going to automatically do something like this. Throw new, not implemented exception. Basically, it's saying, I'm going to make this for you, but I'm going to throw an error if you don't change it because you need to do something with it if you want me to make it. So we could literally just remove that and it do nothing. It would call make title would do nothing, and then our program would be over. Let's watch this happen. This will be exhilarating. Done. That was fun. That's not what we want to do though. We want to make a title. So before we do that, let's change the properties of our console so we have a little bit of color. So I'm going to pull out color. And remember, we saw some properties in the metadata up here. Here's all the properties, the gets and sets. Well, there should be a foreground color and a background color. Is this in order? Yeah, there it is. Foreground color, background color. It is definitely not in alphabetical order, because why would it be? But I want to change the foreground, which is the text, and the background, which is the background. So let's just do that right now. I'm going to say console.background color equals. Now, do you see what I'm seeing here? It knows when we declared the property, when it declared the property up here, it declared it of type console color, which is not a built-in type, but it's another class that Microsoft has built. Actually, it's an enum, which is like a list. It's kind of like a class, but not really. It's like a list of things that makes things easier to just list them out rather than having to write a color in blue. What if you spell blue wrong? This makes it dummy proof. It's an enum. So it's expecting a console color to be set. So when I go here, and it automatically knows that this is what it wants, so it pops up console color for me. So I'm going to say, I'm going to hit enter to pull up console color, dot, and there's all our colors. Let's go red. Do whatever you want. Pick a color. Let's set the foreground. So what should we write on the foreground? Foreground color equals, it's probably already set to white, but we could do white or we could do yellow. That will be terrible. Okay guys, now let's add some ASCII art. There's a couple websites out there that will turn any text that you write into ASCII art. This one's kind of nice. It gives you different fonts. One thing that you need to note when you're deciding on a font, things with slashes in them like this will be a big problem trying to convert to console art because it will actually try to read this slash as something other than a slash, and you'll have a lot of hardship and trouble on your hands. In addition, what you'll have to do is take each line of text and put it in a console write statement. This could be laborious. You do not have to do this step if you do not want to. This is just to make some fun stuff. And I'll share my actual set of strings in the description so you can use those. I chose the simplest ASCII art I could find. Just straight up lines, straight lines, flat lines, blah, blah, blah. And I surrounded it with asterisks. So as you can see, these are all right line, right line, right line. This is how you have to do it. Whoops. So let's run this and see what this looks like. Nice, red and yellow is horrible. But there you go. We've got ourselves a title. Fun. So what's the next thing that usually comes in a game or any kind of a program after a title? A menu, correct? Let's make a menu. We'll call it make menu. Make main menu. We might have different menus. Let's go with that. And we don't know what arguments we might need, so we won't add any. We'll just hit that, we'll do that, and it's going to squiggle, and we're going to click the arrow and have it generate it for us. What I like to do, it always generates it on top. I don't like that. I like to make my methods go in order of where they appear in the class. So I'm going to put this one down here. And again, I'm going to get rid of the exception because I'm going to do something. And so let's make a menu. Now, we're not getting into the game today. We're going to make this menu. We're going to be done for the day. I'll try and keep these videos as short as possible so you can consume as many as possible without having to devote an hour at a time. Next video, we'll get into actual game assets and making the adventure or making the adventures and creating brand new classes. But like always, I digress. Let's get back to this. But let's pretend we actually have a game so we can actually set up a bit of a main menu today. And so what would we do? We would need to have a couple options. We would have what options? Start a new game, maybe load a game, maybe create a character, create an adventure. So let's just let's set that up. So let's let the user know what we're wanting. So we're going to say Console.ReadLine. Now, this is what I like to do. First of all, I want to go a few lines below that title. So one thing you can do is, remember how I told you about slashes, that it tries to read slashes? There are a few slash functions. /n is a new line. You see how that turned colors? It's a different color than a normal string because it says, oh, okay, that's a new line. I want to go down a couple new lines. So I'm going to do /n/n. Now, all right. Now, one of the ways I like to do my menus when I'm looking for input from the user is to give the user a hint as to what I'm looking for. You've seen this happen before, probably, if you've ever seen old console games. The way I do that is I do a parenthesis and a capital S, start a new game. That's a prompt to the user to push S if you want to start a new game. Let's give them more options. Start, right line. Now, I don't have to do another line here because as you can see, or as you can read, this is right line. It's actually going to end with a line. It's a single line. There is a method called just write, and that doesn't give you a new line. It gives everything smushed together. I don't want that. I don't need that. Nobody got time for that. So the next thing would be, how about load? Whoops. Load a game. And create a character. Create a new character. Like it. Beautiful. Now, how do we get this information from the console? You guys remember? Console.ReadLine. And we didn't give that anything. We didn't put that in anything, so it's just going to read it and then go away. So we got to declare a variable, right? Variable. I don't know, user main. Not the best probably. I'd probably think of something better, but I'm gonna call it user main. And let's write out to them what they told us. You chose. All right, so now let me just really quick show you something really fast with strings. Strings are great. Love strings, but sometimes we want to connect strings together. Right? And there's a way to connect strings together. It's called concatenation. I could use a plus sign just like I would with numbers, and I could say more stuff. But this is an old way. It's a bad way. It's not as good. It's not as easy. What if I wanted to put user main in there? I could do plus user main, right? But then look, I forgot that I have to have a space. This wouldn't have a space with this. It's all gonna be smushed. Oh yeah, I gotta have a space. Oh, and I gotta have a space here, right? So there's a new convention called string interpolation. Big words, not that hard though. So before a string, if I put a $, then I can actually put variables inside my string. So watch this. You chose, get rid of all this stuff. I'm still in my string now, but I can actually insert my variable by doing this. Curly brace. See, it gave me 2 curly braces. I can say user main in the curly brace in the string in the line. So now I can actually put this anywhere I want. I can put spaces in it. It's way easier to work with. I can put a space behind it. It's just a lot easier to work with. It's a lot cleaner. It's a lot better than the plus concatenation style. Now I'm going to save that. I'm going to hit F5 or the green arrow, and let's look at there. I put a space there. I need to get rid of that. That's ugly. So I'm going to say S. You chose S. Very good. It's going good for us right now. Okay. Here's my space I got to get rid of. So the last thing I'd like to show you guys is if-else logical expressions so that we can actually evaluate things. I mean, what if the user put a Z in there? What are we going to do? I mean, if we're looking for an S or an L or a C and they put a Z, how do we handle that? How do we even know that? We can figure that out by asking questions. We ask questions with the if expression. So I can say if, and then I got to say what I'm ifing. So if user main is equal to, and I don't do single equal because that actually assigns it. That would actually change it. So if I want to say if username is equal to, it's two equal signs, S, oops, oy vey, S, that's not going to get, we need to S, L, or C, right? So I'm going to say if username equals S, and here's how I would say, or user main equals L, or user main equals C, then I can go ahead and go about my business and do whatever they say, correct? But what if they don't? Now what happens? What if I want to give them a second chance? Like, okay, you screwed up the first time, user. Here's a second chance. Well, if they didn't do what I asked them to, I need to give them an else. We know by this question up here, they didn't do S, L, or C. So we're going to give them an else. It has to be this. So we're going to have to just try again. I'm going to put this here again, give them a second chance. I'm going to add our line to say, hey, guy, you didn't pick the right letter. Question mark, exclamation, question mark. Now, you don't really want to write something like this and be rude to your users. I'm just trying to be funny, but again, it is what it is. All right, so I want to take away one of the extra lines. I don't need two lines. I got an error here. What's going on? Oh, I forgot my semicolon. There we go. And now I'm going to give them a chance to redo it. And I can do the if-else again. I'll show you how to redo the if-else again in the next video. So you can constantly do the if-else until they do it right. That's what I'll show you in our next lesson. All right, let's run this and see how this works. I'm going to say C. Thanks, but these letters actually mean nothing. Huh, okay, let's try it again. Let's try a W. You didn't, it asked me again. Of course, I didn't put a read line here, so it did just finish the program, but you get the idea. Finally, I want to show you one last thing. I'm going to put an S in here. Wait, it says I didn't put the right letter in, but I did put the right letter in. Do you see our problem? Yeah, it's casing. That's lowercase. I'm looking for uppercase. So one way we can handle this is to use a method that's built on string called toUpper or toLower. You can force whatever they give you, you can make sure it's either uppercase or lowercase, or it converts it to either uppercase or lowercase. I could even write it on the end of Console.ReadLine. That's actually probably the better way of doing it. Or down here, I could say toUpper or toLower. Now we looked in our if statement, we're looking at all uppercase letters. So let's make it toUpper. And that's a method on string. And so string will convert, even if I do a lowercase s, it'll make it an uppercase s. Let's verify if that works. I'm gonna do a lowercase s. Boom, you chose capital S. Good job. That's how we handle casing. So guys, we're done for today. Next lesson, we will learn about loops and file systems. We'll learn about JSON, JavaScript object notation, and how to load in a JSON file and read it. We'll start creating new custom classes for our game engine. You really don't want to miss it. It's going to be a great lesson. Thanks so much for sticking with me, and we'll see you next time. Peace!